Hi, I'm Eric Lynch with Build Create Studios. Today, in the first ever edition of our video weblog, we're going to talk about core deliverables for websites. The idea behind this video is to give you some comparison when you're shopping around looking to do a website project. The quotes you get from all the various providers that you talk to are going to be different. And what we want to do, of course, and what you want to do when you're comparing quotes, is to have some kind of apples-to-apples comparison so you can understand what you're being proposed, how these things compare. So what we've put together is a basic framework to fall back on that every website project basically breaks into 4 distinct phases with specific deliverables in them. And I think that's a valuable framework to rely on when you're trying to compare quotes and understand how your project is going to come together. This is also one of the most popular topics we've ever had on our blog, so I thought it'd be a great way to kick off our vlog. So here we go. The 4 phases that we're going to discuss are design, development, content, and launch. The reason that we've abstracted it to this degree is the web changes all the time, and the deliverables that fall into these phases have changed a little bit over the years. But these kind of 4 pieces still remain intact, and they're how every project comes together, basically. So the other thing you want to keep in mind is that there's a difference between products and services. If you're thinking about this, the product is the tool that people are using. The service is using those tools to build your product. It's the difference between the tool and the craftsman, right? There are lots of tools out there, and tools are cheap. Craftsmen are expensive, and that's a lot of what you're paying for when you're hiring a web design firm. So the design phase is where that starts. Regardless of what interface you're using for your content management system, whether that's you're going with the absolute base level, like you get a Squarespace site and it's just a software as a service platform, you pay, set it up, you're ready to go. Or you're working with content management software, whether that's WordPress or Drupal or something like that. That's the tool. The service is design. Even if you go with a Squarespace or something, once you have access to the tool, you still need to put something together. This is selecting the imagery that's going to be on your site, identifying the core messaging, picking colors. If you don't have a font together, you've got to get, not a font, a logo. If you don't have a logo together, you've got to get a logo. You've got to pick your fonts. You've got to establish all this visual identity stuff. And that happens in the design phase. What we often group into the design phase are a number of other related deliverables that cover the discovery process so you can do the designs, things like the kickoff meeting and maybe a photo shoot if a photo shoot is necessary. Those things are all about getting creative assets together so that you can do the design phase of the content. So for some projects, there's also can be very large discovery, branding, identity phase that occurs before you even start the website project. We're not touching on that today because we're mostly focused on the web design process, but just to put that out there, if you don't have those things together already, sometimes those things can precede the website project, but they're not just about the website project. They're about something bigger. Development is kind of the broadest term that I could pick to cover a phase of the project that's probably changes the most year to year. Design is basically always still done in Photoshop. You're getting mock designs together. They're static images. For development is just a catch-all term that we're using for the technical setup of the environment that you're going to create your site in. If we go way back, that was, you take the mock designs and you make HTML, CSS templates out of them. Maybe you're making, a static HTML page. You're doing a lot with CSS, but that was the development. As content management systems have become the standard, development means selecting a content management system, converting the design into a theme. In some cases, people use a pre-existing theme, and you want to keep an eye out for that. And they're basically in the design phase designing to the constraints of a specific theme. In other cases, you're working with a developer that's kind of a notch up from that, and they don't use existing themes, they make their own. So they take the designs, and part of the development phase is turning those mock designs into a functional theme. Other work that happens in the development phase are things like getting your hosting environment in place, setting up the dev site, getting the content management system installed, putting the theme on there. And then there's a lot of configuration that happens, particularly when you're working with functionality beyond the constraints of a basic marketing site. So today we're focusing on core deliverables, so we're not going to get into all the other crazy deliverables that could go along with a website project. We'll keep it at the level of a marketing site, but if you were going to throw e-commerce or forums or some other kind of functionality like that in there, interactive with the user, that kind of goes into the development phase, unless it's substantial enough that it kind of warrants its own entire separate section. So, content. Content is maybe the most labor-intensive phase in terms of the back and forth between you and the client. The important thing to understand for content is the source of the content. Are you as the client creating the content and providing it to your web developer? Are you working with a full-service design agency and that design agency does copywriting and they do photo shoots and they're going to do graphic design services? I'm always surprised when I occasionally talk to people who look at us as a web firm and then they go, oh, you do graphic design, as if they're totally different. But some people think of them as different things. So you want to understand where you're at on that spectrum and how your developer thinks of themselves. Do they think of themselves as graphic designers? If you need an infographic or a custom icon set or something like that, are they going to provide it? Are you going to provide the copywriting? Are they writing it? Do you have imagery already? Are you an established company and you've got a bank of creative assets that you can go to? Or maybe you are and you still need a photo shooter, you're totally new and you need some original photography, or maybe you're using stock photos. These are the things you want to figure out. What are the sources of content? That's the first part. Sources, is that included in the quote? And then the other piece of this is content integration. That's taking all of that content and adding it to the site. In the olden days of content management systems where everything was basically just a straight up blog format, you'd have your page header and nav would go up here, and then there'd be a sidebar over here, and then your entire site content was just like one box and everything would just fill in here. Content integration was a very straightforward process. I mean, it would literally take a few minutes a page. You're just going copy, paste, maybe insert a photo here, and you're done, right? Sites today, people expect more from the site design and layout. I mean, honestly, you should too if you want to have a professional looking product. And so filling that content in has become a more elaborate process, and it involves understanding fundamentals of layout where maybe you don't have a sidebar at all, but people are also figuring out, how you want to lay out blocks of content, and do you want a dividing section here, and maybe you're going to have a feed of things here and a bullet point list there, and then another section here and a call to action below your, before you hit the footer. And what we're finding is that as each subpage becomes more complicated, the content integration work takes a little more legwork too. But, and this is kind of the benefit there, is you get a much higher quality product. It's something where each page looks intentionally designed, intentionally set up. So that's the content phase. And understanding, again, what's involved in that is going to be really important to understanding any website project's process and any quote that you get, because, again, you want to understand the difference between product and service throughout. Launch is the last piece we'll touch on, and I'll keep this brief because it's we could do an entire series of videos just on site launches. But site launch is again a catch-all term that we're using to cover the entire review, wrap-up, quality control process, pre-launch prep, the launch itself where you're actually repointing the domain and actually launching the site, which that moment itself is brief, but the prep work and the follow-up work are substantial if you're doing it right. This is also things like getting analytics set up, a lot of technical stuff. If this is a site relaunch, you're putting 301 redirects in place. If this is a content management system that the client's not familiar with, you're probably going to want to include some training in that phase of the project on how to use the content management system and follow-up support after the launch of the site, because every site launch comes with some bugs and some hiccups. So for the launch phase, what you're looking for is an understanding of what that phase contains. Does it have a solid quality control process included in it? Is there ample time allowed for follow-up? If you need additional support and training, are those kinds of things included? This can also be a good time to talk about whether or not your developer has an ongoing maintenance plan as a part of their contracts, if they're doing your hosting, or alternatively, if that's just like an ongoing IT service that they provide. So again, this is essentially a valuable framework to fall back on when you're trying to understand website projects, how they work. I hope this video has been helpful, and we'll dig in more on each of these other points later, because obviously there's going to be a lot to talk about in the videos to come. So thanks for watching. Have a good one.